Chosen one, they destroyed your heart. So God could build a stronger one. They didn't just hurt you, they shattered you. Not once, but again and again, until the pieces of your heart no longer resembled anything close to whole. They came with smiles on their faces and daggers in their hands. They loved you until it became inconvenient. They stayed only long enough to see you trust them, and then they vanished. But what if I told you none of this was by accident? What if I told you that every betrayal, every heartbreak, every tear that ran down your face was a part of something bigger than pain? You didn't fall apart just to stay broken. You fell apart so that something stronger could be built from the ground up. They didn't see your worth, but that doesn't mean it wasn't there. They didn't understand your soul, but that doesn't make it any less powerful. So watch this video until the end, chosen one, and if your heart resonates with this message, comment below your warmest wishes and the number 99. This is a chapter about wishes coming true and energizing the universe, and it begins right here, with you taking your power back piece by piece. Now breathe, not like you used to. Breathe like someone who's been to the depths and made it back. Because the truth is, they didn't destroy your heart. They cracked open the shell around it. They created space for something deeper to awaken. Yes, the old heart was good, kind, open, but maybe too open, too soft for the war you didn't even know you were in. You needed a heart that could feel deeply and yet not collapse under pressure. One that still loves, still gives, still believes, but is no longer naive. That's what God has been building inside you all along. You used to wonder why you felt everything so deeply, why the world's cruelty cut you open in ways others seemed immune to. It's because you were born with a heart that could carry divine fire. But before that fire could be placed within it, the container had to be remade, not shattered by chance, but broken by purpose. The heartbreak was not the end. It was the hammering process, the sacred forging of a warrior's core. They thought they ended you, but endings are illusions. The truth is, they launched you. Because after the tears dried, after the nights of silence and aching loneliness passed, something new began. A silent strength, a fire in your eyes, a knowing in your soul that you could no longer be manipulated, discarded, or diminished. You don't beg anymore. You don't chase. You don't explain your worth to those determined not to see it. You simply rise. You've become quieter in the room, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've learned not everyone deserves to hear your heart. Silence has become your boundary. Distance has become your protection. And peace, sweet peace, has become your power. Your energy no longer leaks from unguarded wounds. Your love is no longer cast into voids that echo but never return. You've learned. Oh, how you've learned. It was all a lesson in love, but not in loving others, in loving you, in choosing you, in seeing your own worth, not in the reflection of another's approval, but in the mirror of divine design. And now, every beat of your rebuilt heart sings with a new song, not of sorrow, but of sacred strength, the kind that says, I'm still here. I'm not what happened to me. I'm what rose from it. You were never meant to blend in. That's why your heart broke in places others never even knew existed, because you were being shaped for a role no one around you could see. God wasn't trying to punish you. He was preparing you. You had to learn how betrayal feels so that you'd recognize false love the next time it showed up. You had to be let down so you'd never again lower your standards. You had to walk alone so you'd know the difference between loneliness and peace. And here you are, not bitter, not broken, but refined, focused, elevated, Because even though they destroyed what you once were, they couldn't touch what you were becoming. Their actions exposed their own limits, not yours. And every time someone tried to destroy you, they ended up revealing how indestructible your spirit truly is. You've stopped looking for them to apologize. You've stopped waiting for closure. You've become the closure. You've written the final chapter and walked out of the book with your head high. They don't get access to the new you, not because you hate them, but because the version of you they hurt doesn't exist anymore. You don't owe them understanding. You owe yourself freedom. And freedom begins when you realize the heart they broke no longer defines you. The heart you built from that rubble, that's the masterpiece. That's the evidence that you didn't just survive, you transformed. You don't cry over closed doors anymore. You thank them, because with every door slammed shut, a new path was revealed, one that only you could walk, one where your heart became your compass, your pain became your fuel, and your purpose became non-negotiable. You used to wonder if you'd ever feel whole again, but now you realize you were never meant to go back to who you were. You were meant to evolve, and evolution requires loss. So let them remember the old version of you. Let them whisper about your past. Because while they're stuck in history, you're walking into destiny. Every time they underestimated you, it became a stepping stone. Every wound became a map. Every loss became a message. And now you carry a heart that doesn't need validation. It carries revelation. That revelation? You were the miracle all along. The one they overlooked. The one they tried to break. The one they left behind. But the funny thing about divine hearts, they don't stay down. They don't stay broken. They rise. And when they rise, the world takes notice. You've become unshakable, not because you were never shaken, but because you learned how to rise after every fall. You've walked through fire and came out with light in your eyes. You've touched the bottom and discovered power in the depths. That's what they didn't expect. They thought breaking your heart would break your spirit. But they didn't know God was using that very moment to awaken something eternal in you. You are no longer afraid to feel. You are no longer afraid to love. But now, your love is sacred. It has boundaries. It has strength. And above all, it has wisdom. The kind of wisdom that can't be taught in books, but only learned in the fire of experience. You didn't just rebuild, you upgraded. Every piece of your new heart was forged from truth, not illusion. No longer do you chase empty promises or entertain hollow connections. You've come to understand that not everyone is meant to hold something as precious as your soul. And that is not a loss. It's divine protection. The destruction of your old heart revealed what could no longer go with you. What fell away wasn't meant for the future you're stepping into. That kind of pain has a strange way of refining your vision. You now see people for who they are, not who they pretend to be. The masks don't fool you anymore. The sweet words without action, they echo louder than ever. You feel energy now. You sense intentions. You walk into rooms and instantly know who is for you and who is just close enough to benefit. That's the gift heartbreak left behind. Discernment. A superpower carved into your soul by every false friend, every manipulative lover, every smiling betrayer. Your silence has become sacred. You've learned that your peace isn't up for negotiation. No longer do you explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You speak when it's worth it, and you stay silent when it's powerful. You've gone from needing validation to radiating self-respect. And that glow, it's not arrogance, it's the radiance of someone who survived the unthinkable and decided to keep loving anyway. They tried to silence your heart, but instead, they amplified your purpose. You've realized now that the heart they broke was the shell, the seed. What's bloomed in its place is something eternal. You no longer fit into small places. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable. The ones who couldn't love you at your most vulnerable are not invited to your victory. You bless them from a distance and keep walking. You are the definition of resilience, and not the kind they show in movies. The real kind. The kind that cries quietly in the dark and still gets up the next morning. The kind that breaks in silence and still chooses kindness. The kind that has every reason to close up, but instead learns how to protect without hardening. That's what they didn't expect. They thought you'd become like them, cold, numb, guarded. But you rose with a softer strength, one that bends but does not break. Every disappointment trained you. Every heartbreak educated you. Every goodbye was sacred redirection. You're not bitter. You're brilliant, sharpened by pain, but not defined by it. You learned how to trust again, not others, but yourself. And once you trust yourself, you become untouchable. They can't manipulate someone who knows their worth. They can't shake someone who is grounded in purpose. They can't break someone who already rose from the ashes. You no longer try to fix people who enjoy being broken. You don't carry others who refuse to walk. You don't pour into cups that leak. You've realized that your love is divine currency. Not everyone can afford it. And that doesn't make you selfish. It makes you wise. You've stopped showing up for people who wouldn't cross the street for you. Not out of hate, but because you finally learned to show up for yourself. The days of bleeding for unworthy hands are over. The season of self-abandonment is closed. This new version of you doesn't tolerate disrespect disguised as love. You've learned that love without consistency is manipulation. That effort without respect is just noise. That presence without loyalty is a threat. And now, you move differently. Not out of fear, but out of alignment. Because when God rebuilt your heart, He also rewired your soul. You don't just feel, now you sense. You don't just love. Now you choose. You don't just walk, you walk with purpose. The pain that once buried you has now become your compass, and it points to truth every time. You no longer ask, why me? You whisper, thank you. Because if it hadn't been for what broke you, you wouldn't have discovered the strength that defines you. There's something sacred about someone who's been betrayed and still chooses to believe in goodness. You are not naive, you are divine. You understand the cost of trusting the wrong people, but more importantly, you now understand the reward of trusting the right one, yourself. That's what God was teaching you all along. How to recognize your own voice above the noise, how to value your presence before offering it, how to hold your own heart with the tenderness others failed to. You are no longer chasing love. You've become it, and not in a performative way, in a healed, sovereign, radiant way. You walk into spaces and shift the atmosphere. Your energy speaks before you do. That glow they see, it's the light of someone who knows what it costs to stay soft in a world that tried to harden them. They thought they took your heart, but they only unlocked it. The love that lives in you now is not ordinary. It's refined, divine, and indestructible. Because when God builds something new, it can't be undone. Your heart is no longer in pieces. It's in purpose. You stopped trying to be chosen. You remembered you already are. You stopped trying to be loved in fragments. You remembered you're worthy of love in fullness. And now you live differently. You don't settle. You don't shrink. You don't tolerate less than your soul deserves. Not because you're better, but because you finally know you were never broken in the first place. you were being prepared. There was a time you felt too much, gave too much, cared too much, and they made you believe it was a weakness. But now, that same heart has become your crown. You no longer apologize for your depth. You honor it. You no longer hide your softness. You guard it with strength. And that blend of courage and compassion, it's what makes you unstoppable. They didn't just destroy your heart. They triggered the awakening of your destiny. You are no longer living for their acceptance. You are living for your alignment. Your healing is your revolution. And your peace, that's your proof that you made it. That even after all the storms, your heart still beats with divine rhythm. There comes a moment after deep pain when you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start saying, "This happened for me." That shift doesn't come overnight. It comes slowly, after nights you thought would never end, after mornings where you woke up heavy, after moments when even breathing felt like labor. But you kept going, and in the stillness of your soul, something clicked. You realized the people who hurt you didn't take anything eternal from you. They only removed what was never meant to remain. The old version of you would have begged for closure, would have sent the last message, asked the final question, held on to the fragments of what used to be. But now, you've outgrown that part of yourself. You've become someone who chooses their peace over their past. You no longer need answers from people who only gave you confusion. Their silence used to haunt you. Now, it frees you. Now, you see silence as protection, not rejection. You've learned how to live in the absence of apologies, how to rebuild without explanations, how to bloom in the spaces they left barren. That is the power of a rebuilt heart. It doesn't seek revenge. It rises in silence and lets its growth speak. Your healing is louder than any apology they could have given, and your evolution is the only response you'll ever need. You no longer seek permission to feel deeply. That sensitivity they mocked, it's now your strength. You used to think being emotional was a flaw. Now you see it as a superpower. You feel what others suppress. You process what others bury. You transform what others avoid. That emotional depth is the well from which your wisdom flows. And now, instead of apologizing for it, you honor it. They told you to toughen up, but what they meant was, become like us. Harden. Shut down. Don't love too much. But you weren't built to become them. You were built to rise above them. And now you understand that real strength isn't hard. It's holy. It's the kind of strength that smiles without pretending, forgives without forgetting, and loves without losing itself. You don't hate them. You've outgrown them. And outgrowing someone is more powerful than any argument, any revenge, any last word. When you outgrow what hurt you, you win without lifting a finger. That is the secret they don't want you to discover. You're not stuck. You're just evolving. And those who were meant to stay, they would have grown with you. So many nights you prayed to get over them. And what you didn't realize was, you weren't just healing from a person. You were healing from the parts of yourself that accepted less. You were healing from the low standards, the overlooked red flags, the silenced intuition. They weren't just your heartbreak, they were your reflection, a mirror showing you the areas still unhealed. And once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. That's when the true rebuilding began. You started choosing yourself. In rooms where you once shrunk, you began saying no without guilt. You learned that walking away isn't weakness, it's self-respect. That protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's sacred. And now, you wear your boundaries like armor, not to keep love out, but to guard the sacred within. The old you wanted to be understood. The new you just wants to be at peace. You've stopped trying to convince people of your worth. You've stopped proving your loyalty to those who tested it. You've stopped offering your heart to those who only wanted your energy. You've stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. This version of you loves differently, smiles differently, walks differently, because everything that tried to destroy you only ended up redesigning you. Your blueprint has changed. The love you offer is now grounded in self-awareness, not self-sacrifice. You used to give until you were empty. Now you give from the overflow. And when your cup isn't full, you rest, you recharge, you retreat. You no longer burn yourself out to keep others warm. You are not bitter. You are awakened. You are not cold. You are cautious. You are not broken. You are rebuilt. You are not lost. You are realigned. And that chosen one is your truth. That's what sets you apart. The way you turned your heartbreak into healing. The way you turned silence into sanctuary. The way you turned pain into purpose. You are no longer waiting for them to see your value. You've already claimed it. You are no longer looking to be rescued. You rescued yourself. You don't need a savior when you've become the warrior. You don't need validation when you've stepped into self-love. The people who walked away gave you a gift, the space to find yourself again. And in that space, you discovered what no one could give you. Your own power. The power to say no. The power to rest. The power to walk away. The power to create. The power to protect. The power to begin again. Not from scratch, but from wisdom. You don't have a clean slate. You have a seasoned one. And that's even better. Because now, you write your story with eyes wide open and a heart made whole. Not by others, but by truth. Let them talk. Let them question. Let them wonder how you're still standing. What they don't know is that you're not just standing, you're ascending. Every setback, a setup, every heartbreak, a portal, every goodbye, a new beginning. That's the rhythm of your rise. That's the melody of a chosen one who remembers who they are. And you, yes you, are just getting started. When they walked away, you thought something was wrong with you, that maybe you weren't enough, that maybe if you had done one more thing, said one more word, changed one more part of yourself, they would have stayed. But now you see it clearly. It was never about your worth. It was about their capacity. They couldn't receive what they didn't understand. They couldn't love what they were never ready for. And so they left. Not because you were too much, but because you were more than they could carry. That realization didn't come easily. It came through pain, through empty rooms and silent phones, through staring at the ceiling, wondering how someone could claim to love you and then disappear. But over time, your perception shifted, and you began to understand that rejection was not a curse. It was redirection. It wasn't meant to break you. It was meant to save you from giving your heart to people who would only mishandle it. You used to see your brokenness as the end of your story, but now it's the beginning of your strength. Because in your most shattered moments, something unshakable awakened inside you. The version of you that rose from that wreckage is nothing short of extraordinary. You don't just feel deeper, you see clearer. You've learned that peace is not found in someone else's presence, but in your own alignment. The spaces they left empty are now filled with your own growth. You've become your own home. You laugh differently now, not because you've forgotten the pain, but because you've made peace with it. It no longer owns you. It no longer defines you. The scars remain, but now they speak of survival, not sorrow. You no longer ask people to meet you halfway. You meet yourself all the way. You no longer beg for attention. You give yourself presence. You no longer chase love. You live in it. And that love radiates from you. It shines through your eyes, through your voice, through the calm in your spirit. The love you carry now is not just emotion, it's embodiment. You know who you are. You know what you deserve. You know what you will and will not allow. And that knowledge has become your shield. Not a wall to keep people out, but a filter that ensures only those who are aligned with your value can come close. This isn't about isolation. It's about elevation. You no longer fear endings. You've learned they are sacred beginnings in disguise. You've stopped clinging to things that were never built to last. You've stopped watering dead plants, hoping they'll bloom again. Instead, you've planted new seeds of truth, of power, of joy. And those seeds are growing into gardens that no storm can destroy. The old version of you was trying to survive. The new version of you is here to thrive. You've turned your breakdown into a breakthrough. You've turned your silence into wisdom. You've turned your pain into poetry. And now, every word you speak carries weight because it's been forged in fire. People don't recognize you anymore, and that's okay. You weren't reborn to be familiar. You were rebuilt to be elevated. And not everyone can follow you where you're going. Some were only meant to be lessons. Some were only meant to activate the transformation. They didn't break you. They broke the illusion. And from that truth, you found yourself. You've stopped giving your energy to chaos. You've stopped pouring into black holes. You've stopped shrinking to fit small minds. Your light no longer dims to make others comfortable. You shine, fully and unapologetically, not out of pride, but because you've earned it. You've realized now that heartbreak doesn't mean you're unlovable. It means you're human. But the way you rise from that heartbreak, that's what makes you divine. That's what makes you chosen. Not because life has been easy, but because you turned your wounds into wisdom. You turned your tears into teachings. You turned your ache into awareness. You no longer settle for almosts, for maybes, for one days. You want real. You want depth. You want connection that matches your evolution. And until that arrives, you don't wait in despair. You live in purpose. You pour into your own well. You build your own table. You write your own story. You've learned to love your solitude. Not because you're avoiding people, but because you've discovered peace in your own presence. That's when everything changed. When you stopped searching for someone to fill the void and instead became the fullness. You're no longer afraid of being alone because you know now that being alone doesn't mean being empty. It means being whole. It means being grounded. It means being undistracted long enough to hear the voice inside you. The voice that says, you are powerful, you are worthy, you are chosen. Let others chase noise. You move in silence. Let others beg for attention. You embody presence. Let others conform. You transform. Because you didn't come this far just to blend in. You didn't survive just to exist. You rose so that others might see what it means to truly live. They may never understand your journey. That's okay. It wasn't meant for them. It was meant for you. And now, you walk in that truth. You carry your heart, not as a wound, but as a weapon of light. And wherever you go, you bring healing. Not because you were never hurt, but because you healed anyway. This is your new reality, healed, whole, and rising. There's something different about the way you move now, something refined in the way you carry yourself. It's not loud, not boastful, but it's unshakable. The energy around you has shifted because when your heart was rebuilt, It wasn't stitched back together the way it was. It was re-engineered for a higher level of living. And that quiet confidence you now exude, it comes from surviving the kind of pain that would have destroyed most people. You're not the same, and thank God for that. The version of you who once begged to be seen is now fully visible to yourself. You no longer need the world to applaud. You applaud your own evolution. You no longer ask if you're enough. You already know you are. There's power in that certainty, a kind of invisible armor that shields you from anything that tries to diminish your light. Now, when they come with empty words and hollow intentions, you don't flinch. You don't entertain the chaos. You don't fight for a seat at a table that was never meant for you. Instead, you build your own. You fill it with authenticity, alignment, and people who speak your soul's language. Your new life isn't built on fantasy. It's rooted in truth, in boundaries, in discernment, and most of all, in deep, sacred self-love. The kind of love that says, I don't need to prove myself to anyone. I don't need to chase what's mine. I don't need to tolerate disrespect under the disguise of love. You've been through too much to settle for less now. You've seen what pretending costs. You've felt the weight of inauthenticity. You've lived through the ache of waiting for someone else to recognize your value. And that season is over. You've stepped into the era of your own choosing. You choose peace over performance, depth over distraction, truth over temporary. You no longer bend for people who only show up when it's convenient. You no longer break yourself down into smaller pieces just to be digestible. You've grown, and because of that, you've left behind anyone who needed you to stay small, to feel secure. This strength isn't loud, it's steady. It's the kind of strength that smiles when misunderstood, because it no longer needs to be explained. It's the kind of strength that walks away from manipulation, not in anger, but in wisdom. It's the kind of strength that says, I love you, but I love me more. And that isn't selfish, it's sacred alignment. You used to crave connection so much that you tolerated inconsistency. You used to hold on, hoping things would change. But now you understand that true connection doesn't require you to betray yourself. Real love doesn't ask you to abandon your voice. The rebuilt version of you knows how to love without losing yourself. And that kind of love, it's rare, it's refined, it's powerful. The old you used to explain your heart to people committed to misunderstanding it. The new you stays silent and lets actions speak. You've become fluent in energy now. Words don't impress you. Consistency does. Promises mean nothing without action. You no longer fall for potential. You observe patterns. You listen closely. And when something feels off, you honor that feeling. Because now, your intuition is your compass. You no longer second-guess it. You no longer silence it to make someone else comfortable. That whisper in your soul, you trust it. That pull in your chest, you follow it. That gut feeling, you obey it. Because your rebuilt heart has learned how to protect itself without shutting down. And yes, there are moments when the memories return, when the echoes of your old wounds resurface, but they don't own you anymore. They don't define your steps. They may tap on your shoulder, but they no longer control the direction of your life. Now, when pain comes, you meet it with understanding, not fear. You breathe through it, not collapse under it, because you know now, pain is not your enemy, it's your teacher. You've become the safe space you once looked for in others. You no longer need to be rescued. You're your own rescue. You no longer wait for someone to heal you. You've done the work. You've cried the tears, faced the silence, held your own heart in trembling hands, and whispered, "We're not going to stay broken." And from that promise to yourself, you rose. Not all at once, but slowly, intentionally, day by day, choice by choice. And now, when you look in the mirror, you see someone who is not just surviving, but thriving. Someone who doesn't just hope for love, but has become the embodiment of it. Someone who doesn't just talk about peace, but radiates it. There's a glow on you now that can't be faked. It's not just beauty, it's battle-earned brilliance. The kind that comes from knowing you've walked through the darkest valleys and still found a way to bloom. They tried to bury you, but they forgot you were a seed. And now, everything about you is rooted, grounded, aligned. You've stopped spinning in circles for people who never intended to grow with you. You've stopped rehearsing pain. You've stopped playing small just to be invited in. Because now, you know, you were always the table. You were always the blessing. You were always the one. They didn't see it, but you do. You don't just walk anymore, you glide. There's a rhythm in your steps that wasn't there before. Not because life got easier, but because you got clearer. Clearer about who you are. Clearer about what you will and will not accept. Clearer about your power. Your healing has rearranged your entire atmosphere. And now, your presence speaks before you do. You enter rooms differently, not with desperation, but with divine confidence. The love you were once begging for? You are that love now. You've become the home you were searching for. The peace you thought someone else would bring. You discovered it was always within you, waiting to be unlocked. That's what heartbreak does to those who are chosen. It doesn't just break them, it awakens them. You've become more selective, more sensitive, more spiritually grounded. Not because you're jaded, but because you now recognize how sacred your heart truly is. You don't let just anyone near it anymore. You've stopped explaining your energy to people who never deserved access to it in the first place. Not everyone can walk with you now. Not everyone is meant to. Some people were only allowed in because you hadn't learned your worth yet. But now, you know. You know that your love isn't ordinary, that your presence shifts the frequency in any space, that your heart, rebuilt by divine hands, is no longer fragile. It's fire. You've walked through betrayal and didn't become bitter. You've sat in silence and discovered your voice. You've lost everything and somehow found yourself. And maybe that's what it took. Maybe losing everything was the only way to remember that you were the blessing. Not the relationship, not the approval, not the validation, but you, your soul, your light, your voice. That's the treasure they couldn't see, because they were never meant to carry it. They were meant to walk away, to fall short, to betray, because if they hadn't, you never would have become this version of yourself. You've learned to love in new ways, not out of need, but out of truth. You no longer give your energy to those who haven't earned it. You don't prove your value. You embody it. You don't wait for the world to affirm you. You affirm yourself daily. And that kind of love, it changes everything. You smile differently now, not because everything is perfect, but because you are present, fully here, fully aware, fully you. The mask is gone. The pretending is over. You've come home to yourself. And that feeling, that peace, that wholeness, that's priceless. You are the evidence that pain doesn't get the final word. You are the proof that broken hearts can be rebuilt into thrones. That rejection is divine protection. That loneliness is sometimes the doorway to the deepest self-love you'll ever know. You didn't just survive, you transformed. And now, everything about you is sacred. You laugh with your whole chest. You cry without shame. You speak with intention. You move with purpose. You rest with no guilt. You love without losing yourself. You choose yourself, not in ego, but in reverence. Because after everything you've been through, you finally remembered what they tried to make you forget. That you were always worthy. You don't need to be chosen. You are the chosen one. Not because you're perfect, but because you were willing to walk through fire to become who you are today. The way you love, the way you protect, the way you feel deeply and still move forward. That is divine. That is rare. That is powerful. You've stopped asking for closure because you are the closure. You've stopped asking, why did they leave? And started asking, why did I ever settle? You've stopped romanticizing pain and started romanticizing peace. Your story no longer revolves around who hurt you. It centers on how you healed. And that shift has changed everything. You no longer rush. You trust timing. You no longer cling. You release. You no longer tolerate confusion. You demand clarity. You no longer try to convince anyone to stay. You bless them as they go. You don't argue. You align. You don't chase. You attract. And what you attract now matches the frequency of your healing. It respects your time, honors your heart, and reciprocates your energy. The ones who left, they didn't destroy you, they revealed you. They didn't end your story. They launched the next chapter. And that chapter is written in the ink of self-love, sealed with divine confidence, and carried on wings of peace. You're not starting over, you're rising from within, elevated, empowered, entire. This isn't a comeback. This is a rebirth. And the world isn't ready for the force you've become. You're not just stronger, you're smarter. You're not just wiser, you're radiant. You're not just healed, you're whole. You, chosen one, are proof that the strongest hearts are the ones that were once broken and rebuilt with fire, truth, and divine hands. I am the storm they didn't see, the silent force of destiny. I don't need doors. They break for me. I walk in truth. I walk in free. This is the sound of rising strong, of turning pain to sacred song. I am the love they couldn't hold, rebuilt in light, unbreakable, bold.